Hi, I'm Jennifer Allen, reporting for RSNA News. I'm talking with Dr. Yoshimi Anzai, Chair of the RSNA Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Dr. Jeffrey Klein, RSNA Board Liaison for Publications and Communications. We're talking about the state of diversity in radiology and how RSNA is working to promote diverse representation within the society and the specialty. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Dr. Anzai, I'm going to start with you. What is the state of diversity, equity, and inclusion in radiology?
Thank you, Jennifer, for the question. Radiology falls way behind of achieving racial and ethnic diversity. We almost compete with ophthalmology for the least diverse medical subspecialty among all the clinical practice. Underrepresented minority students do not choose radiology for their career. In terms of gender diversity, approximately 30% of full-time faculty in radiology, diagnostic radiology, are women. We are among the bottom 3 clinical department in terms of gender equality or diversity, following orthopedic surgery and surgery. So I think we have a long way to get to racial and gender diversity in diagnostic radiology.
I think in addition to the fact that we sort of are underrepresented as far as women in the field, we tend, I think, like many specialties, to lose women over the course of their career.
Mm-hmm.
They do not have the same opportunities, and so as we age as a specialty, I think we see even a smaller percentage of
Definitely. I think that
middle-aged and older radiologists, which is, I think, a real problem.
Absolutely. I think it's important to look at attrition, even though maybe trainee, we have a more body, like a 33.5%, but then as you move forward, we may lose some women radiologists, particularly for women underrepresented minority students. I think that's something that we have to take it seriously.
So Dr. Klein, what is RSNA doing to identify the gaps that it might fill to help radiology leaders understand these issues and make positive changes in the specialty?
Thanks, Jennifer. Well, obviously through our Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which Dr. Anzai chairs, I think we recognize that one of the first steps is to try and get better information about our members. So for this reason, the RSNA has started to collect some data from those members who are willing to share it with us, so that we can at least get a sense for where we are as a specialty and where we need to go regarding those who either volunteer for the organization or who represent our society. For those of us in leadership and decision-making roles for the RSNA, we know that unconscious bias regarding gender identity, race or ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, and ability can really strongly influence the evaluation and selection of faculty, committee members and leaders, speakers, honorees for the society, award winners. And so we've started implementing formal training for recognizing and addressing unconscious bias to help guide us as we strive to build our committees and choose leaders for the organization that are more representative of the broader population that the society serves.
Dr. Anzai, speaking to that, can you share a little bit more information about the RSNA Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion? What exactly are the committee's goals?
Right. Thank you so much for the question. Committee on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion is a relatively new committee, but really show the commitment for RSNA to really embrace diversity within medical subspecialty. So the committee has a charge, and I think that there are many statements. I can just relate it to the charge statement that we created just this year. So the committee shall survey the RSNA activity and those of other organizations, issue affecting diversity, inclusion in radiology professions. And we try to identify the gap to make a recommendation to ensure the appropriate program or tools available to all members and also RSN leadership. I think that there are 4 goals. One is really raise awareness and provide education on the importance of diversity and inclusion of women and in the underrepresented minority in a profession. And also number two, to promote outreach and mentorship. I think it's really critically important to proactively reach out to those people who may not choose radiology for their career. Number three, identify resources for training and a strategy for diversification and unconscious training, just Dr. Klein talked about, and a conflict resolution. And number four, providing some forum for discussion how diversity is being taught across the countries, strategy to improve their endeavors. So those are the four goals for this Committee of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And as Dr. Klein mentioned, we just had a sort of unconscious bias we call everyday bias training for all of the leadership, editorial board, board member, trustee, committee chairs. And actually it was really, I felt like a lot of interest and also enthusiasm about learning more about those unconscious bias, because everybody has a bias, and it's important for us to recognize first in order to mitigate some negative impact of a behavior. So.
Yoshimi, I don't know how you felt about the training I think we both experienced last week. I really found it to be particularly valuable, even though I've been through similar training here at the university where I work. And I sort of get the feeling that it's one of those issues that we constantly need to revisit and think about on a regular basis. This isn't sort of a one-off or one-time approach that's effective, but we need to constantly be reminded of the way we make decisions, of our biases, which we all know exist, and really remind ourselves on a regular basis how to recognize them and really how to address them appropriately.
Absolutely. Yes, I completely agree. I think that's why it's not just a one-time bias training and a check, I'm finished, but rather kind of continuously training. And this was a very sort of a baseline training, I would say, recognizing biases, but then move on to kind of bystander training. If you found some sort of like a biased behavior, then we are able to and is skilled to intervene to something so that we can disrupt the culture to continue. And I think that this is just an ongoing continuous effort, but I thought that people were very interested in engaging, a lot of the chat boxes, a lot of the comment. I think it went really well.
I agree.
Dr. Klein, what are RSNA's future plans to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusion among its members and leadership?
Well, first, I think it's important to know that inclusion is now one of RSNA's core values. And our strategic plan includes the goal to promote a diverse representation within the profession and to ensure diversity in RSNA leadership. So these core values and the strategic plan really do help guide essentially every deliberation that the RSNA Board undertakes. We, I think, clearly need to expand our support and the opportunities for our medical students, for our resident trainees, for our young career radiologists, so that a diverse group of individuals will consider radiology, as Yoshimi mentioned, as a career option and be retained in our specialty over the long term. We will work with our staff and our members to help create an inclusive environment in the radiological sciences, to continue to make efforts to provide opportunities to traditionally underrepresented groups on our committees, for our featured lectures, and obviously on the board of directors, and to recognize the broad spectrum of honorees and awardees that have contributed invaluably to our specialty and to the society. And in this regard, I think it's important to note that in the year 2020-2021, 57% of RSNA's committee chairs are women. And this actually increased to 61% in the 2021-2022 year. So I think we're beginning to make progress, but as Yoshimi touched on, this is something that we have to constantly keep on our minds and work towards in order to achieve success.
Great. Thank you both for your time today.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
For more information about diversity, equity, and inclusion, look for sessions on these topics during RSNA 2020. And as always, you can find more radiology news at rsna.org/news.